Hey everybody, in this video we'll talk about what to do when you have a bad session.
I think no matter how long you've been gaming, what your experience is gaming, you're gonna have a bad session at some point.
Yeah, and so then what do we do about that? And if it happens really early on with a new group, that can kind of set the tone for you maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe you've been playing for years and it was just a slog for one session, which could, maybe be 3 or 4 hours? Mm-hmm. It definitely happens. I think for me, and we're kind of talking from a player's point of view here, for me, it's important that you sort of try to identify why it was a bad session for you. And then talk about it, either to the DM, to the group, if that's necessary. And then you sort of figure out, well, what do I want to try to do if that starts to happen again?
So sometimes it's going to be an internal thing. You had a really stressful week at work or other things are going on. Maybe you weren't feeling well. You had a headache or an upset stomach. That happens.
Yeah, I know for me, D&D is, or any other role-playing, D&D is sort of this is how I deal with crap in my life. But yeah, maybe you didn't get enough sleep and there's a bunch of stuff going on at work and you've got a doctor's appointment next week and you're really distracted and things like that. And you know what? It happens. And I think everybody around the table, the other players and your DM all understand that. And so, recognize, okay, this was a thing about me, and that's why it wasn't as fun for me this session. And so if it is that internal thing, then you know that it's your stuff that you're bringing to the table, and maybe that's what you're going to keep an eye out for in the future. If it wasn't an internal issue, then it's an external issue, right? If it's not about you, then it's probably about something else that's going on at the table. So was it the session in and of itself? I play a barbarian in our home group, and so if there's a shopping session that immediately goes into a bunch of puzzles and a little bit of espionage and court affairs, Storm doesn't have a whole lot to do. And so that might just be, I'm bored. That's why I didn't love this session. I was bored. And that's fine too. It doesn't mean that it was a bad session, but it means that it was a crappy session for me. And so then it's just realizing, okay, this was sort of an external thing. The session wasn't necessarily what my character excels at.
Mm-hmm. It also could be maybe subject matter of, if you are playing a game, and this is especially the case if it's early on in the campaign, and something gets brought up, like you were talking about earlier, a Conan game where it's very dark and there's slavery and kids get hurt and all these things that maybe you weren't anticipating, that could definitely lead to a bad session.
Yeah, and we've talked about before that there's ways of dealing with that in the moment, but then after the game as well, that might just be a good time to identify it and say, okay, this might not be the game for me. And that's a good realization to have.
And another external thing might be something one of the other players did, whether it's a play style or something their character did that they didn't like. I know you had...
or maybe the third or fourth session that we were playing with our friend Pierce. My character found a magic ring while we were all looting, and I rolled a stealth because I didn't want anyone else to know. I was keeping it all for myself. And during the break, our friend Pierce, you can follow him at Sorcerer Blob. Our friend Pierce was like, "Hey, I don't want to yuck your yum. I don't want to tell you your fun is wrong, but I don't really enjoy games where the players and their characters are constantly hiding things from each other." And that was really cool because he was like, I acknowledge the reason why Storm did that. It was character driven, but this isn't something that I enjoy a lot of. And that was a great moment. And it was a good way of identifying, it was something that someone else did, but it didn't become a you're playing wrong type moment.
Mm-hmm. And I think that leads into the next, which is communicating.
Yeah.
to the other players, to the GM, communicating with the people that need to be in that conversation.
Yeah, if it's something another player did, then you can bring it up directly to the player, like Pierce did. If it's an internal thing, it was all about you, I think it's still a good idea to, like, maybe on a group chat or whatever, or we have a Facebook group for our campaign, just be like, hey everybody, I was in a weird headspace, so I didn't have a great game. I hope I didn't bring anybody else down. Looking forward to next week.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important, because then it lets the other players and the GM know it wasn't you. You don't need to change anything. I had stuff going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you identify why this wasn't the best session, why this was maybe even just a bad session. Talk to whoever you need to talk to, one-on-one, or maybe just in the group or something like that, so that you can acknowledge it and keeping those lines of communication open. Hey, it's kind of weird. A lot of our videos about this kind of stuff. I hope you watch all of them. I think they all basically are about communicate.
Yeah, talk to each other.
Respectfully talk to each other about what it is that's going on. So once you've identified why it was, and then talked to whoever you need to talk to about it, after that it's planning for what happens when it starts to happen again.
So like with the internal thing, maybe it's making sure you have Tylenol or painkillers if you get headaches a lot, or acknowledging like, oh, I'm really tired, maybe I need coffee, maybe I need water. Taking care of yourself in that situation so that you can have fun at the game, which is why you're there to play.
And also just letting your GM and the other players know at the top of the game, be like, that's just like, hey, I'm really looking forward to tonight, but just so you know, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so if I'm a little loopy, let me know, and I'm sorry ahead of time. Even saying that to them probably keeps it in your own head.
Mm-hmm. You can ask them for help of like, I might be all over the place. Can somebody help check my math when I'm doing stuff? I know that's a big thing when I get tired. My adding skills go out the window.
Yeah. And if it's an external thing, if it's the kind of thing where players keeping secrets from each other, hopefully if you've had that conversation, everybody's figured out how to move forward so that the whole party is still having fun. I adjusted the way Storm sort of plays. She still stays true to herself as a character, and she still is a bit of a thief and steals stuff, but I have made the active choice as a player that it's not magical items. I'm not ever doing something where I'm keeping something that could be beneficial for the whole party from the party. And if I do steal stuff and don't tell people about it, then it's stuff that doesn't really matter. It's for flavor.
And you can also like check in. I think check-ins are really good to say to the GM like, hey, this has been great. I've noticed we've started going back to a whole lot of shopping sessions. Mm-hmm. Moving forward, can we have a few more combat encounters or stuff like that? Like communicating that as well.
Yeah. Part of the communicating and planning for the future, if it starts to happen again, might also involve realizing that you're not in the right game for you. So with the reference earlier, we've talked about, really grim, dark games, which can be a lot of fun. But if you're starting in a brand new campaign, saying, hey, so some kids got hurt last session and I wasn't expecting that. And that's kind of a no-go area for me. So is that something that's in this game? Because then you don't tell the GM that their story is wrong, but you can also realize maybe it's your time to step out of the game. Now, if you're in a session and something like that comes up and it's never really happened before, then maybe there are some tools that are out there, sort of just like stepping away from the table for a second, or even bringing something up, or even just saying, hey, can we take a quick break? I'm so sorry. And then talking about it and saying, I'm really uncomfortable with the subject matter. It's never come up before. That might be a way to go. But also realizing not every game is for every person, and that's okay. That doesn't make those grim, dark games full of slavery and kids getting hurt bad or wrong, per se. And it doesn't make you wrong for not enjoying that.
Yeah.
It just means it's maybe not your game.
And that also gives the GM a chance to, if it wasn't something that is usually going to come up, they can let you know. And then you can go, oh, great, I'll stay. And then the GM knows, oh, if this starts to ever come up again, I'll go a different route.
Yeah. Or finding that compromise and saying, okay, well, there's a major plot point where the big bad guy hurts kids, like kidnaps small children. Is there a way that can stay as a part of my story, but we avoid some details and so you stay comfortable? And all of a sudden you're talking and having open conversation and nobody's telling someone else they're wrong. And it avoids that really bad session again in the future. There's one last way that you can have a bad session, I think, and that's when it comes down to the dice. Sometimes there's combat that just the dice don't go your way and they don't go the entire party's way. And so the combat lasts for 2 hours and it's a slog. Or maybe you roll a bunch of ones that night and there's some really nasty consequences for your character. In that case, I think it's just remembering that the dice mechanic is a part of the game. There are some ways to make it a little lighter on that. We've got some videos about like how to run combat without dice at all. And embrace the ones.
Yeah.
Embrace those failures. And even though it might have sucked that night, it could lead to some really cool character development in the future.
And I think, you're gonna eventually have a bad session, and that's okay. Oftentimes you can look back on that bad session and kind of laugh about it or find the humor in it. We had a horrible session that we look back on and go, oh my gosh, the Arby's session.
The Arby's session.
You can also look at, maybe it's the character you're playing. Maybe you rolled up this character and you were in a very different headspace when you created the character, or it's just not meshing with the rest of the group, and you really love where the campaign is going and the group, and you want to keep playing, but it's becoming really hard to play the character, either to make the choices that make sense to stick with the group, or you're just not enjoying that character anymore. And I think at that point, talk to the GM and see if there's a way to retire that character, or, especially if the GM likes to have character, like story-driven character death or some stuff like that. Like maybe your old character's death can motivate the new character, or maybe that character just goes off on their own and lives their life somewhere else and somebody new joins the group.
Either way, that's still those three principles, right? You identify why it went wrong, you communicate with the people that need to be talked with, and then you make that plan for the future.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think those are the three things that it comes down to. When you have that bad session, figure out why, talk to everybody and let them know that, I figured that out, this is what's going on, and this is how I can try to make sure we're all having as much fun as possible moving forward.
Thank you so much for watching. If you have any tips for how to handle a bad session, let's talk about it more down in the comments below. We want to give a special thanks to all of our patrons, especially Tucker. Hey Tucker! If you're interested in helping support us and getting some cool perks, you can head over to our Patreon. You can also support us by liking and sharing this video and subscribing to the channel. All right, until next time, I'm Dawn.
I'm Ryan.
And this is Roll for Initiative.
Bye.
Bye. Bloop, 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 bloop.